while I was working on the book of Chantos, Hooking, which I've been reading in Montreal and now here, and tomorrow in Toronto, I've also been working on, at the same time, on another book of riddles. So I thought I would give you a little taste of the riddles. One sequence has been published in Red Ledger, I think. There's one copy there. This is the interactive bit. Maybe you could say answer the riddles, maybe. This is a sequence called "I'm Bursting to Tell," Riddles for Conception Bay, and there are maybe, I don't know, 20 odd or more. I'll just read 2 or 3 because I'm really here to read Chantos. I'm the conduit of neighborliness. At my best, I'm hot-tempered. Alone, I grow cold. In my belly, I hold what will be a stream soon. And I like to read the riddles twice. I'm the conduit of neighborliness. At my best, I'm hot-tempered. Alone, I grow cold. In my belly, I hold what will be a stream soon. There you go. I've got more pleats than a girl's skirt, and I'm the first to jump up for a dance. I fancy the swoop, the razzmatazz. Draw me out at a party, and I'm a real old smoothie. I'm on to the ins and outs of a tune, but I'm a touchy sort. Rough handling makes me squawk. I am the blind one, the old brown one, knobbed and warty. In my dusty coat, the earth's eyes. In my cream innards, I hold a story of water, sometimes a faint dark at my heart. I am the blind one, the old brown one, knobbed and warty. In my dusty coat, the earth's eyes. In my cream innards, I hold a story of water, sometimes a faint dark at my heart. You're the crowd for the riddles. A collapsible eye, capital I, a collapsible eye. I'm your very own tunneler, your private worm in the head. I've got your number. An absence license, I wheedle you into air, into the rushing elsewhere. A collapsible eye. I'm your very own tunneler, your private worm in the head. I've got your number. An absence license, I wheedle you into air, into the rushing elsewhere. It's one of the contemporary objects with
The cell phone?
Cell phone. Okay, I'll stop there.
Just gotta get us stumped.
No stump. Oh, no stumping there, right? So I think I'll read one poem from Mery Begot. This is the book that most people know, so maybe I'll read the title poem. It's interesting, I've noticed that both the title of Mery Begot and Hooking invoke, on one level, they invoke the illegitimate, yes, that. So when people are trying to find links between what I'm doing now and what they have seen me do, maybe that's one they could make. Because hooking isn't only suggesting mat hooking, is it? And Mery Begot is one of the names in the vernacular in Newfoundland for a child born outside marriage. Others are moonchild and moss child. No, they're not heard every day on everybody's lips. They're heard some days on some people's lips. Mery Begot. When the moon was newing and the night burned black, some rapscallion, some young pelt, some nuzzled tripe set off down the path with the go of a born-again preacher, crept in under our apple tree, shinnied on up, swift and hungry as a starved mosquito, stripped it bare. And himself playing Don Juan in the kitchen, not a sound did he hear. No apples for winter, and from the look of her belly, a good chance of a Mery Begot. All of these poems are little dramatic monologues with various speakers. So. Now, I'm really happy to be reading some of the Chantos here in Ottawa because they had their beginning in Ottawa. So I'll just tell you a little story about that. When ARC was planning its 30th anniversary issue, it invited various writers, and Anita Lahey invited me to contribute something, and I cheerfully said yes, and then she said, and the theme of the issue is 30. Now, I did not find 30 a very inspiring concept somehow. And I thought about it for a while, and I really wondered what I was going to do. And you know, sometimes when you are mulling something over for a while, it can happen. You wake up in the morning and your brain has been working on it overnight. And I woke up one morning and I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll make a collage poem. I'll make a 30-line poem out of the 30th lines of 30 poems, and that seems a kind of appropriate form for the celebration of a journal, which is a kind of chorus of voices anyway. So I made that. I did not know about Chantos. I was making collages. I made it. I very much enjoyed the process. I found that it raised questions. It presented challenges of work with syntax. That was when I'm just thinking of one. So I made some more, and then I made some more, and gosh, then there was a book. Deanna has mentioned a little bit about, and then I discovered that there was a thing called a chanto, and that it had its origins back in classical times when poets would make a tribute to maybe Homer or Virgil by taking passages, not individual lines, but passages, all from that one writer, and weaving them together into something new as a form of tribute. And then around the 4th century AD, Ausonius set down some rules. So, you know, lots of people are practicing something when somebody decides you've got to make rules about it, or set them down. And he said that it could be from many poets. Well, so I tell my students, you can't make a form by accident. You don't do that. But in a way, I guess I bumped into, they're collage poems. And these pieces, they have that added constraint of each poem is made of, I continued that practice, each poem is made of the line at that point, in the same point in the poem. So the first poem in this book, Cloth, is made of the 7th lines of poems. There is a great sense of order when you see the poems on the page because they have, I believe there's only one that has no stanza division. They are all organized in stanza form. Many have triplets, but there are quatrains. There are various sorts of stanza forms, and that's something that we might talk about. So maybe I will read the poems and you can ask me questions and we can talk about them. Or we can just have a drink and talk about something else. Okay. I think these poems in one way they're tone poems, they're mood music, they have a surreal element, so perhaps listening for the first time, just let yourselves go with them, don't fight them, and but they are more, I do not mean them simply to be that they have motifs, they are, I think the work as a whole is expressing a vision. And not, well, I'll not say more. Oh, this rich bracelet. Cloth. Carry water, and it too will be history. Out there it helps dead of winter to have magnitudes swell out and fail, as if a door to the exit gate, or, if you stopped to look, a mathematical question for your evenings. The cats sanitize their wounds, seem to remember seasons, the will of an executioner, a crevice. The screens yawn the bees through the fog and the minute's silence, like a photograph, but not of itself. Or did we only imagine that shape, Odysseus with his many skilled fingers? Sister may be a blur, great aunt, a smear. The fog won't lift tonight, but now we are alone with it, and know a piece of cloth was lost beyond the line. That's one of the first set of 3 actually that I published. You know, I think I'm discovering that a way to read these might also be in sets of 3. They seem to appeal to editors in sets of 3. They may be rather like very rich chocolates. So you have a few at a time. So this is another of that first set. A little tin pail. The notes abandon so much as they move, and now it is the souring flowers of the bedraggled, alone by the river with its mandolin. And the young ones, and another man who remains inside his own house, throwing a little tin pail at the heart of the priest. On either side there's a wall that holds up the huge doors and altars. The screen door bangs, and it sounds so funny. The green-headed fly shouts as it buzzes past, watching the landscape unravel into what's gone. The ant's a centaur in his dragon world. But when he finds that thin green seed, branches agog with secrecies that spring, maybe he didn't make it. Maybe hydrogen. People believe it, maybe from laziness, and to participate with the flair. On a misshapen wheel, we play, what animal would you be? It must swim for miles through the desert, the rocks, the bestiaries of the ancients, speechless with soil and blind. These that I've been reading are in 3-line stanzas, and this one too. Automatic doors. And his mouth was an oil exploration gone bankrupt. So much was paid, the dog tapped its tail. Later, though, drawn together by all those years of looking but not touching the fabulous animal, a coin in the tongue, I looked round for a cue at the world of business, the automatic doors wincing away. They got a lot of closet space, and each of them is inwardly a vault that presses up and blunts those who walk ahead, even though the wind blinds them. All over the roof, rain hisses. Who was your favorite? Who had a crush on you? Deanna mentioned an interview in the Malahat Review. That appears online, and it was accompanying the issue, the fall 2012 issue, which included 3 Chantos. I'll read some of these. Invitation cards. The management, one by one, stumble from their cages, but without sound. The soul dwindles, sometimes to an end. Upright in rimless glasses, silver hair, they wait the chairman's praise and glass of water, meals and physician victories. After how many years? However, the sky grows dark with invitation cards. Forget the rhetoric, the trick of lying, of flying like a bat deep into a narrowing tunnel stretching by the river. What was it? I have forgotten how to perform a funeral, now that the sun, like a lion, licks its paws. Here, after a meager diet of horizon, is some scenery. Storms of flying glass, of the pen across the page. Another eye looking through a hole, half water. Hurroo, hurroo! Law is the one waited for history, its elbows tense, where serpent logs lay hissing at the air. I think hurroo, hurroo is my favorite line of all the quoted lines in this book. You know this line from Johnny, I Hardly Knew You, the greatest anti-war poem I know. Applique. First, having read the Book of Myths, they had begun to whisper as imperceptibly as grief. Hearing the judge's well-considered sentence, the atom bellies like a cauliflower. Call it the refrigerator's hum at night. On the most beautiful day for airstrikes, the season is called the evening. The buildings are at their stations, untimely. Here's the little dressmaker. It's like a tap dance, like applique on nothingness. Where did these enormous children come from? Children picking up our bones. Tell me the windows aren't really sweating. In their congealed light, there are portraits and still lives. A young woman looks nervously out of the picture. The mourners stand around the bed. In the hall of mirrors, nobody speaks of the miscellany. Hesitant silhouette. Condemned irretrievably to his own time, from the bombed-out bridge, the melting corpses of farms, he pursued a vision of wholeness by means of collage. There was a darning mushroom, the last bead of an abacus, and someone brought out old fireworks and language and garbage. The dog spit sealing up the view. Exhaling ink attentive to the rhythms of beach rows, stories that seem to correspond to it. Remember how to suffer here on the grass, the white screen between you and the living. There is no telling. But at every gesture they made, unbuttoned, writhing for air, comparing snapshots on their mobile phones, the woodblock baby that gobbles up everything, the hesitant silhouette, and the secret thing in its heaving, there demanding the light on, sounds loud and close. Seats in the examination hall are staggered. One's afraid to close one's eyes. No mark survives this place. You too will yield. What was that about a jig in every poem? A line of blue. The city loves us now it's moved us in. Those who live there are always hungry. They can tear themselves through the eye of a needle to an embroidered circle where their silence seems a breakfast hysteria. Perhaps you have felt it. So close now to these tall windows, ignoring the high fidelity gossip, we sip our herbal tea. But somehow it was the synthetics. The movies are true and the mute, sealed house. Those relatives in my favorite slides died and lay at the feet of the wars, a line of blue out past the silted harbor. This is my story, my brief biography. At us from photographs, ink gleams wet only a moment. Books lie open on the carpet or singing birds. A convalescent steps around the electric train to turn up fragments of poems. The earth is beautiful as a postcard. And that figure loitering below in the yard, rowing out at noon, soundless as fur, or at the lookout finally, calls suddenly. The fields wait patiently as though someone drags half of his paralyzed body across the floor, or something brimming which he must not spill, and his tongue wouldn't work. Come home and draw up a bucket of water anywhere. Though there are rumors, hints in certain old books, the film ends there. And I think maybe I would like to stop reading now and welcome your questions. Is that saw Rhonda's hand first, and then I saw Susan.
I'm just curious how you approached it. I'm looking, I have the book and I'm looking at the back with the source lists for each poem. And so did you sort of decide what you wanted each poem to be about and then go combing through, you know, your vast history of a lifetime of reading? Or did you put out several in front of you? I'm just, or
Okay.
different.
What's your question? No, I'm not answering, I just want to see.
How does this work speak to your voice and why?
Okay. Which one do you think is simpler to answer, hey?
know.
But I wanted to see the order, I wouldn't begin any poem. I mean, this is one type of poem that I do see as very much, you know, of course it's part of me because I did it, but I wouldn't approach any poem with a firm grid of ideas and then I must go and find. So the parallel with, and, you know, I make the joke, there could be the net-stockinged leg of a Parisian prostitute collaged with this. There could be a fish hook, so but all kinds of images. But definitely the mat hooking parallel is a good one, I think, for understanding the way that I made these, and that is that as a mat, somebody making a mat collects fabric and then cuts the strips and assembles the mat from the materials. I mean, mat hooking is, now people go and dye their own wool, and it's a big, but traditional mat hooking is very much an aleatory practice. So I collected lines. If I decided I was going to make a poem out of line 7, I collected lots and lots and hundreds and thousands of line 7s. The poem emerged from then, as I made it, and in the process of the syntactical connections. Part of the excitement of this process is the syntactical work. I don't know if that, is there more, if there's more you wonder about? And Susan, that would take me, how is it, these are lyric poems, I mean, with a surrealist element. And if we were to talk about, you know, I'm not going to take that time tonight, but talk about pure language poems and the lyric, you know, on the other side. I see these inhabiting a kind of middle ground. I did not say I will put certain motifs in this book. However, I observe reading these poems now that, you know, as I read them as a complete manuscript, there are motifs. I don't like to say to people, this is the vision in these poems, but I do think they reflect in this refracted medium. The way, I guess, a parallel might be the difference between a realist painting and an expressionist painting. They do reflect my vision, but through different means. The continuity is that in making a book like Mery Begot, I am working very much with language, and I am fascinated by language, and the continuity of all of my books of poetry is that I'm working with language. The discussion about Mery Begot in some quarters anyway foregrounds the Newfoundland content, and that's a very, very important dimension. But maybe all poetry has some kind of a content, and maybe people could get sometimes fixed on that to the, and then be a little bit blind to the technical, to the matters of execution and work with language. So I don't, if you have
a very
a,
large question.
yeah, if you want to sort of make it take a subsection, I could maybe say more, but that's,
Well, I suppose the thing that struck me as you read was that in one way, these tributes to poetry underline, present the strength of the poetic voice. They present, they celebrate the richness of poetic language in its true sense, not the thou and inst or whatever, but the putting together of exciting, evocative, weird, rich language that keeps, somehow gets beyond the simple statement of a syntactical element or of a narrative element. And so I thought that was a very rich justification, a reason for these poems existing.
And the experiment is one reason. I think one thing behind it too is that I thought about the amazing achievement of someone like Christian Book in Eunoia. That is a brilliant book. That book has a vision. I have heard Christian Book speak. I spoke with my grad students for 55 minutes without notes, very eloquently about how he made that work and how there was, and he said it elsewhere, there can be no subjectivity because of the number of constraints. Now my tiny little constraints are very modest compared to the Houdini-like achievement of that book. But I don't agree with him. I do not think his analysis of what he has accomplished is the case. When there's a human subject working with language, there's subjectivity. So yes, we can talk about these pieces are a chorus of voices, and therefore they make some kind of statement about all these voices. E.M. Forster talked about having all novelists in one room, and we don't categorize them by decade or century. But I also think that these poems do express my vision, even when you use aleatory principles. And an interesting thing to me is also if you paint or if you work, I do some ad hooking, so if you work with color, you notice how if you put two colors next to each other, you get certain energies. You work with brush strokes, and the perceiver does something with that too. So I'm fascinated too by the energies that get created by juxtaposition, and very interested to see how people read these. Any other questions or comments?
Going back to syntax, are the lines exactly as they appear, or do you change them?
Absolutely exactly as they appear. Not punctuation or capitalization, but the words in the order. In fact, John asked me that in the interview. Were you ever tempted, to improve somebody's lines or to make them better? And I just said, well, I find that a strange question because I consider each line this inviolable strip. That's my material I'm working with. If I go mucking about with the line, well, I'm creating something very different, I guess, and entering into a different kind of relationship with the reader. So no, the lines are absolutely as they are.
Including verb tense?
Including verb tense, yeah.
But not punctuation.
Not punctuation, of course not. The punctuation has to be at the service of my syntax, the sentence that I create.
Also, you didn't read the line. That was interesting. You read the syntax. You read. And as I was reading along,
I
didn't read you didn't sort of hang.
That might have varied. I do like to read. I do like to acknowledge.
And I was
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think it makes, certainly to look at it as you read it,
Yeah. Well, no, I hear that, but I do like. It could be that I'm very tired too, and I haven't got the kind of energy to do that kind of torque at the end of the line, but I try. You had a question? Or an observation?
Softball, but I'm curious as to how the act of teaching has affected your approach to your own work.
It might be the other way around, though. It might be that my writing might have affected my teaching. I don't know. How my teaching might have affected my poetry?
Right.
Did you have anything in mind as a possible sort of?
I'm fascinated by kind of change your work has gone through, and I was wondering if perhaps either students or the act of explaining has made you fascinated by something that you were not originally.
No, I don't think so. I mean, you can't be making the same. Well, I think some people would like me to make Mery Begot over and over because it's fun, but I think you're exploring and you're making new kinds of things. And as I said, I was writing these. I bumped in, it wasn't that I bumped in, I found this as a way to solve a problem because I was invited to contribute a poem to a journal. And a collage, pretty common notion, you know. No, I don't think so. I think one is trying to not repeat oneself, and I read widely with most poets, and so no, I don't think. I mean, my reading for teaching is part of my reading, so it's a hard question to. I think for me to answer other than very generally. Any other?
Not a silver
Yes.
I hope this will be really simple. I'm just curious how you physically do this. Do you write the lines by hand or do you work with a computer?
At all stages, I write the lines by hand. I write the poems by hand. I write drafts by hand.
Did you find yourself skipping ahead to like line sevens?
What do you mean?
Or like when you were really writing and you were flapping and you were collaging?
Yeah.
Did you find yourself at times sort of really looking to see, you've already had it already home, do you find yourself looking to see what, say, a line 7 or a line 9 or a needed line?
Well, you know, lots of times I was reading and I was not in Chantos line cutting mode, so no, I wasn't doing that. It's a whole, very interesting about the process of this, but to me at least. You're in I find that you're not exactly in a full trance state when you're writing anything that's of interest, but you're somewhere in there. So reading the whole poems and, you know, it's a quieting thing. So, yeah, so no, I was reading the poems. And, but masses of the lines didn't get used, of course, yeah. So. John.
Just another quick question about your compositional method. So going back to the example of a poem composed of line 7s,
Yes.
and you said that you began by foraging for line 7s, maybe hundreds of them, maybe thousands of them. In what form did you preserve them? Did you actually write out those line 7s on separate slips of paper and put them in a bag? I know that my grandmother used to hook rugs, and she had what was called a rag bag, which was just full of scraps and fabric, and she'd rummage through them and match up colors and textures and patterns and so on.
Yeah.
Was your method like that, or did you have them all on a piece of paper, and which the chronology in which you found them was preserved?
The parallel with man hooking is not that close. Now I read many, and I wouldn't write many of them two processes of selection, plainly. I write, some of them I read and I wouldn't write down. Would I know why I would write some of them down? No. Some of them might be and then, or into the garden, or,
Right.
so without any notion of whether they'd be useful or not. A lot of them, but they got written down in notebooks. They got written down with count keeping that got more and more careful as I went on, because I did want to acknowledge the poet and the name of the poem, just as I would if I had, so I wrote them down in notebooks. And so line 7, there would be line 7 notebooks and line 13 notebooks. And I seem to be fond of some numbers more than others. Yeah. And there's a great deal of agony in the proofreading, because you don't want to be misquoting the title or misspelling the name of the poet, nor do you want to see the line mangled. I have already found one typo in the line of a poem, and I am so upset about that. I don't know if I can look for any more. So anyway, thank you very much for coming and listening to these and talking with me about them. And I'd love to talk more if you'd like to.